You want me to start from March 22nd,
Yes, sir.
2011?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Upon, as I mentioned earlier, upon being the GBI was requested, I traveled to the scene initially. Then I went and I met with some troopers, and we started, for lack of a better word, the manhunt, trying to locate the individuals responsible for the shooting. At that point, we actually set up a makeshift command post at the Howard Johnson off Atlanta Highway. From there, me and another investigator were responsible for sending out basically contact teams that were trying to locate Mr. Hood. So we were coordinating that, and as that was happening, we were being given leads or possible sightings continuously throughout the evening. At one point the next day, we actually reestablished our command post at the Athens-Clarke County Police Department. And then I went there and I continued to do the same thing. There were other agents working on specific leads in reference to the case, in reference to that they were working the scene on Sycamore Drive. They were working additional scenes and additional pieces of evidence were being processed while we were coordinating the search for Mr. Hood.
How about the overlumping, the carjacking? Or did you investigate that, sir?
It was being investigated by agents and investigators. We knew what was going on. I received information that was going on, primarily because obviously Mr. Hood had been seen there, so we were trying to locate him at that time.
Was you part of the massive manhunt? Did you investigate? Was you part of that investigation, sir?
I was helping coordinate the massive manhunt. I was at command post. I only left the command post a few times during the 3 days because there had to be someone there to help sort and to assign different leads into where his whereabouts might be.
How about, did you investigate the alleged hostage negotiation? Was you involved in that, sir?
Yes, sir, I was.
Could you tell us your investigation and involvement in that, please?
My involvement, on the 25th, I was in the command post, and we were receiving information, and we started receiving a lot of information about people and it was real vague information, people possibly not showing up at work, and some family members saying, hey, I'm receiving strange texts or strange phone calls from a loved one. And during this 3-day period, everybody was aware of the search, and everybody was aware of the situation, what was going on, and there was a lot of tension. And I think people were afraid that possibly their loved one had either been involved in that or had been called basically by Mr. Hood. So at one point during the evening, that afternoon, I actually walked down to the end of the command post to kind of clear my head because there was a lot of information, there was a lot of stress, not a lot of sleep, and I received one of the dispatchers that was actually in the command post said, there's a phone call for you, Agent Hillsman. And I was kind of abrupt with them. I turned around and said, well, who is it? And they said it was Mr. Hood. And at that moment, I was in a command post, but the 911 center is actually at a different location. And they tried patching him through to the command post. And they could, for some reason, it wouldn't work. We couldn't get it patched through, so I had to move down to the 911 center. At that moment, when the dispatchers handed me a phone, and it was Mr. Hood on the phone.
Why were you surprised that I called?
I don't know that I was surprised.
What'd you call? You said abruptly to you. What do you mean by that?
During that, it was pretty chaotic in the command post. There was a lot of information coming in, and we're trying to sort through it. So I think I was just a little aggravated that somebody wanted to talk to me at this moment. Who could it be?
How many different agencies that y'all have involved in this manhunt, sir?
There were numerous agencies. We had a tremendous pouring of local law enforcement from the area, different sheriff's offices from the surrounding area. We also had federal assets there, including the FBI. I know Marshal Service was there also, numerous agencies.
Do you have a specific number? Was it 150, 200 officers? What was it?
And no, sir, I don't have a specific number of how many agencies were involved. It had got to a point that we had to almost turn agencies down, not because we didn't need the manpower, but because we couldn't control the manpower. We couldn't keep it wrangled if we had any more agencies coming in to assist.
Did y'all apprehend me, or did I turn myself in?
You were taken into custody.
I think you misunderstood the question.
Okay.
Did you apprehend me, or did I call and turn myself in?
Yes, sir. You called us and you told us, and we were able to, you told us your location, or you got one of your hostages to tell us your location. Yes, sir. And through about a day's worth of negotiating and speaking with you, you were finally taken into custody that evening.
Prior to me calling and turning myself in, did y'all know where I was?
Not exactly, but we were starting to receive a lot of information from the hostages' families, and we were feeling like we were getting close.
Okay. What information was you receiving from the hostages, alleged hostage family?
That some of their loved ones hadn't shown up at work and stuff, so the natural order of what we would do next would probably be start searching their residence and going and doing welfare checks on these individuals.
Did you get any texts or phone call from the alleged hostages from their family? Were people receiving texts and phone calls from the alleged hostages?
Did I receive some? No, sir.
Do you recall any texts or?
That was the information we were receiving in the command post. There was information coming in that there were individuals that didn't show up at work and stuff like that.
So you didn't get no information about, Jamie been on the phone or Jamie got him over there at the chateau? You didn't get that? You didn't get none of that?
I'm not clear what you're talking about, sir.
Did you have any contact with the alleged hostage family?
I did not, no, sir.
So did you talk on the phone with somebody saying that, hey, Jamie got my family in the chateau, he a hostage? You didn't receive that phone call, sir?
No, sir, I did not.
Now, I'd like to take you back to March 22nd, 2011.
Yes, sir.
Do you recall having an interview with Officer Jerry Johnson?
I do, yes, sir.
Could you tell us about that interview on March 22nd, 2011, please, sir?
It,
I think you need to be more narrow in his question about this, tell us about the interview. I think you need to be more specific about what he's asking for, make sure he doesn't get into what was actually said, unless that any part of that statement may very well be admissible at this point for whatever purpose he might be offering for. I would object to the broad nature of that question, which may very well call for hearsay and such.
Yes, sir. Officer Johnson already testified. And I know he had a live interview. I got to see the other live interview. So this is what I'm trying to get at, but he want me to be more specific about it. I have no problem with it. When you interviewed Mr. Jerry Johnson on March 22nd, 2011, who was present with you?
and I do not have that report with me, but I believe it was Lieutenant Manguson from the Athens Clarke County Police Department.
Was that interview recorded?
Yes, sir.
How was that interview recorded?
The Athens Clarke County Police Department, we did it in one of their interview rooms, and they have a DVR that recorded that conversation.
You stated that you did a written report on the interview, is that correct?
That's correct, yes, sir.
Why did you bring your report?
Because I've got numerous reports here, and I did not bring that one.
Do you recall what was in your written report?
Not specifically, no, sir.
Have you ever testified before the court?
Yes, sir.
Have you ever brought your written report with you before?
Yes, sir.
Why you didn't bring this specific report, sir?
The case file is extremely large, and I couldn't bring every report from that case file.
You didn't have them, you wanted to hide them?
No, sir.
That's a leading question on the rec, and it's probably minutes as well.
Sustained.
He's got the reports.
I'm trying to lay a foundation, I get it. I don't have to lay a foundation.
Ask another question. The objection is sustained.
Well, could you tell us what you recall in that report, please?
I remember speaking with Officer Johnson because he had witnessed part of the incident that occurred on Sycamore Drive, and he gave me his what he had seen during that incident.
Do you recall any specifics of what he told you that you saw, sir?
That would call for hearsay unless a portion of that statement would be admissible for a particular purpose. That he would offer that, and we could do that with every single person, that every person who's called here we testify about, and go into every one and play all the statements, but under rules of evidence, that would not be admissible.
The objection is sustained.
Yes, sir, I do.
Is it a bad acting presentation of what you saw that day on March 22nd? Well, your report that you created from that interview, sir?
It's a summary of the interview that I did with
And I
Officer
would like to
Johnson.
send it into evidence, defendant exhibits 28, please, sir.
And I think that goes back to the other objections we had. That report, really, to go into evidence, would be a summary of the interview of Jerry Johnson, which obviously would be hearsay, and would not participate in the rules of hearsay. And there are only specific reasons why a statement, or perhaps parts of a statement, could very well come out, and that has not been established at this point. Again, we could do this with every single witness and every single person.
Mr. Jerry Johnson have testified, he already have testified, so it wouldn't be hearsay, because Mr. Johnson already testified to his report. I asked him questions about this report, so it could be hearsay because he already have testified.
I'll sustain the objection that I'm not being due this time.
But can I ask him questions off this report, since he has?
I can't tell you what you can do till you do it, so I don't.
Ms. Hills, did you write anything in your reports about any radio shots fired?
I think that calling for the same matter, I think we start going into it. I think, again, there has to be, if you can establish the appropriate reasons why certain parts of hearsay would come out, I would have no objection. But I don't think you established that with the rules of evidence that we have here.
Sustain.
During your interview with Officer Johnson, did you hear anything about shot fired on the radio? Or who fired the shots?
Mr. Johnson advised that he heard 2 loud pops.
Did Mr. Johnson advise that Officer Howard stated shot fired over this radio?
No, sir.
Did you write in your report that Officer Johnson stated, Officer Howard stated shot fired in your report? Did you write that in your report? You have to answer.
Yes, sir.
Why did you write that in your report?
Going back on memory, Mr. Johnson must have told me that.
So Mr. Johnson told you Officer Howard got on that radio and she shot fired. That's why you put it in your report, correct, sir?
That's correct.
Okay. Did you put anything in there that Officer Christian, 10-4 out there shot fired? Anything about Officer Christian stated in your report, sir?
No, sir.
Did you put anything in your written report about Officer Howard having the gun holster dropped?
Again, he can go into every, if you start going into every single matter that's there, Officer Johnson was here, he was asked that question, he testified to that. Any part of this is not a matter that's, inappropriate to offer at this time.
Objection sustained.
Your Honor, the remedy that I have Officer Johnson on witness list, I call him and recall him, so I don't have to, I can just get off of it. Okay. How long did that interview last?
According to my summary, it started at 2:15 p.m. and concluded at
Did you put
at
anything?
2:53 p.m.
Revealing your report, who was there present with you during that interview?
Already asked that question, and he already answered it.
Sustained.
Did you put in your report Lieutenant Mark Magnuson was present with you during your interview?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Why did you put that in your report?
Because he was present with me during the interview.
Was anybody else present with you?
No, sir.
Have you had a chance to listen at the audio videotape review that of this interview you had with Mr. Jerry Johnson?
Yes, sir, I have. It's been a while back, but I have reviewed that recording.
After you reviewed that recording, could you tell us, what did you see in there that could have possibly helped you on this investigation?
That's getting that indirectly. You say, rather than say, what you see in there that's gonna help you in this investigation, perhaps asking, based on that, did you take the action, you know?
Yeah, I mean, Mr. Hilton, when you did that, recorded interview, did you download it on the CD?
I did not. Athens Clarke County Police Department individuals did. Yes, sir.
So you the one was interviewing, right?
Yes, sir.
You had eight, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So who recorded the CD? I mean, who put it on CD? Do you know who done that?
And he just, thought he just answered that question, downloaded by folks at the police department.
Maybe he knew. That's why I was asking, do you know who done it? Because I want to authenticate it, because I have to have a ground or foundation.
I'll allow the question.
Okay.
I don't know specifically who downloaded it to a disk.
Did it look like this?
That was like any DVR I've seen, but yes, sir, similar.
Okay, but when you reviewed it, it was you on that, you did see yourself and Officer Johnson, Lieutenant Magnuson, on that particular dish that was, when you reviewed it, is that correct?
That's correct. Yes, sir.
Okay, so if you see that disc again, you'll know whether that disc is the disc of the interview.
Yes, sir. If I see it.
Okay. You know, I like telling this to the evidence, because this of that interview that he had. Maybe, since he didn't record it, we might have to leave the jury, let them go out so I can let them see someone to authenticate it.
Well, of course, it's premature for him to offer anything. Said he may have looked at the CD or DVD, and, whether or not, that's not the one obviously he looked at, and whether or not there's any appropriate foundation for his disability, but he still hasn't established a foundation to actually admit the DVD of the interview with Jerry Johnson, which goes back to the hearsay matters of going into where agents, whether Agent Gilsman, you can do that with every single person you talked about, that you record the interview, did you do this, and you want to go through and repeat, go through that on every single person, with every single officer that would go throughout the week here. And that would be hearsay, and it hasn't laid the foundation for his,
Objections to foundation sustained.
You know, I thought I laid the foundation by accident.
I sustain the objection to foundation.
So you don't know who, you won't answer who recorded that interview, so I can't play it. That's why you won't tell us who it is, who recorded it?
that's a lead question, it's argumentative, that's not what he said.
You say you don't know who recorded that interview that you had, right?
So the equipment there at Athens Clarke County, I'm not familiar with. Somebody else actually recorded that.
Okay.
I was there present during the interview.
Okay,
received it from Athens Clarke County personnel.
Well, who was the person who gave it to you?
I believe it was Lieutenant Magnuson.
On what date did he give it to you?
I have to review, hold on a second. That date, March 22nd, 2011.
When did you look at the CD that he gave you on March 22nd, 2011?
After this investigation and something.
What date after the investigation?
I'm not sure.
A month or two ago, 2 or 3 months? Could you tell us something? Give us.
It was a while back.
Just can't recall, sir.
I just don't know specifically, and I don't want to tell you something that's not true.
When you looked at it, you did see yourself on there. Did you see yourself when you looked at it?
Yes, sir.
Did you see Officer Jerry Johnson when you looked at it?
Yes, sir.
Did you see Lieutenant Maxwell when you looked at it?
Yes, sir.
How many times did you look at it?
I reviewed it a couple, maybe 2 times.
Maybe 2 times.
Yes, sir.
When you reviewed, how long did you review it when you did review it?
As long as the interview was.
How long was the interview?
I just told you that. I can give you the exact times. It was from 2:15 to 2, I believe it was 2:53. Yes, sir, 2:53.
Okay. Did y'all talk about Officer Christian at any time during the interview?
No, sir.
Y'all
Talked about the incidents. We didn't talk about specifically who was involved in it. I was interviewing him on what he saw. He was a witness, and he was giving me information on what he had seen.
What did he tell you he saw or heard about Officer Christian?
Again, that's the same objection about hearsay that we covered.
Sustained repeatedly.
Did you write anything in your report about Officer Howard having a video camera in his car?
No, sir.
You did. Doing that video and doing your interview with Officer Johnson, did he state anything about Officer Howard having a video camera in his car?
No, sir.
Is it possibly been so long you just possibly forgot about it?
I don't recall anything about a video.
Okay, can you be certain it wasn't on there, or was it on there? Can you be certain?
You'd ask that question, I think.
Did Officer Johnson state, did you write anything in your report about Officer Howard knowing, as far as who he know who the suspect is?
What suspect, sir? What are you referring to? Which,
Me.
understand that. I understand it says, which incident?
During the police shooting incident, did you and Officer Jerry Johnson discuss about Officer Howard know who the suspect is?
No, sir.
Do you have a page 3 up there in your report?
Yeah. Yes, sir, I do.
What is that first sentence in the report you got, sir?
Officer Johnson stated he believes Officer Howard knows the suspect.
Why did you just say it that he didn't say it?
Memory failed me. Obviously, he did say that.
Did you put anything in your report about the hood or the holster of Officer Howard's holster being dropped?
Yes, sir.
Could you explain that? What the when the holster drop, could you explain what that mean when the hood on the holster drop? Could you explain what that mean?
Yes, sir. Different officers carry different type of holsters, but some holsters actually have a retaining strap that goes over the top of it. And for you to remove the weapon, you have to drop you have to move the hood forward, and then you have to twist or rock back the firearm to remove it from the holster.
Okay. When you drop the hood, is that when the officer can pull the gun out when the hood is dropped?
Different holsters are different. Most of them, you got some type of restraint in the holster to keep the gun from falling in case the hood comes off. I actually have had a holster that has a hood on it, and the hood sometimes would fall open because I bumped it with an elbow or something, but the gun would still be maintained in the holster.
But you said all holsters are different, right?
Correct, yes, sir.
Did you personally see the holster Officer Howard had?
No, sir.
Okay, so but can you pull out a gun if the hood dropped though? Can you pull it out on some holsters if the hood dropped?
Some holsters, yes, sir.
Do you have page 398 on your report?
I'm sorry, say it again.
Page 398, do you have that in your report up there? Do you have that?
398?
Yes, sir, page 398. See? Or it's 205, I'm sorry, it might be 205.
I got a report that has 398 written in pencil at the bottom.
Okay.
Yes, sir. Page 2?
205.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Did you write anything in that report about Officer Johnson say he saw a black male reaching to Officer Howard's car?
I'm gonna have to review my report just a second. Yes, sir.
Why did you put that in there?
Officer Johnson must have told me that.
So, during your recorded interview, you do not recall Officer Johnson telling you that Officer Howard had a camera on his car.
He's already asked that question and answered it, and it's a lead question.
So, but you didn't put that in your report, correct? I mean, did you put that in your report?
I've answered no, sir.
Okay. If he had told you during the interview that there was a camera on that car, would you have put that in your report?
He did.
Are you certain? Or you possibly forgot? It could be that you can't recall.
There was no information about a camera.
That's a camera on Officer Howard's car or Officer Johnson's car?
Not a question, Judge, I would object.
Do you have a page 3 or 5 in your report, sir?
Yes, sir.
Do you have anything on your third paragraph about Officer Johnson saying something about a video on his car?
He said the video in his car was not on.
Okay. Why didn't you just specify that you didn't get that about no video?
You were asking about Mr. Howard's car, Officer Howard's car.
But didn't you testify there was no mention about the video at all?
Officer Howard's car.
So if we look at that video, we ain't gonna see Officer Johnson telling you that Officer Howard had a video camera in his car. That was yourself.
I believe that all Athens Clarke County Police Departments have video in their video.
Why did you just state that Officer Johnson had taken that about that video camera?
I don't understand.
Don't worry about it.
Yes, sir.
How many people did you personally interview during this investigation?
I'm not
March
sure.
22nd, 2011, March 25th, 2011?
I'm not sure, sir.
Not sure.
No, sir.
Do you have any reports of that people you interviewed?
Yes, sir.
Could you look over, please, sir, and tell us maybe what you got up there?
I don't have every report that was done in reference to this investigation with me.
How about the ones you have, sir?
I'm gonna have several reports, yes, sir.
Could you please review and tell us what you have?
2 or 3.
Can you please tell us who they are, where they're from?
Actually, I'm holding one right now with Mr. Quentin Ryden. That occurred on April 7th, 2011.
Do you have any more?
Not with me, sir.
Did you know you were testifying to?
I had no idea what I was testifying to, sir.
Will that prevent you from being fully prepared if you don't know what you testified to?
That's argumentative, and I would object to it.
What did you and Mr. Ryan talk about during that interview you had, sir?
The interview with Mr. Ryden was a follow-up to an interview that was done with him after he was released from the hostage situation on the 25th of March, 2011.
You said a follow-up.
Yes, sir.
Could you explain what you mean by follow-up?
He was re-interviewed.
When was his previous interview done?
March 25th.
And what day did you interview him on?
April 7th.
How many days is that apart?
Not real good at math. It was 2 weeks, approximately 2 weeks,
I'm not
maybe
doing
3
math.
weeks.
I mean, how many days? Could you give me days?
The answer to the question, I believe already. Personally, he believes on March 25th, the other one on April 7th.
Would you agree that approximately 13 days apart?
Yes, sir, approximately.
During that interview, did you and Mr. Reed talk about cell phone recording?
Yes, sir, we did discuss it.
Tell us what y'all discussed about the cell phone recording.
Mr. Ryden told me that he was being held hostage by Mr. Hood from the 24th to 25th, and that during that time, Mr. Hood was talking about different things, and Mr. Redden recorded some of the conversation utilizing his cell phone.
Did you see Mr. Reed record it?
No, sir.
Who was present with you doing that interview with Mr. Reed?
Agent Rebecca Harrell. She was Rebecca Shaw at the time. She's now Rebecca Harrell.
You a written report on that interview, sir?
Yes, sir.
You also recorded that interview.
That's correct.
How long did the interview last?
The interview started at 10:30 a.m.
How was it recorded? Digital or audio? How was it recorded?
Digital audio recording, and it was concluded at 11:12 p.m.
Okay. So approximately what it was?
Less than an hour.
Did Mr. Reed state anything to you that I was a pallbearer at Omari funeral?
No, sir, not that I recall.
During your written report, during this interview, did he tell you that I killed Omari and went to his funeral?
No, sir.
Well, John,
Yeah.
I respect that, yeah, that was a compound question. There were two parts of it. You ought to be able to ask each part about that. But it was a misleading question.
I'll sustain the objection related to compound question.
What all did you and Mr. Reed talk about in the presence of you and Ms. Rebecca Shaw?
We discussed the events of that evening of the 24th and 25th of March 2011.
Did you discuss Mr. Reed doing a live interview with the media?
I did ask him in reference to, I'd heard information that he had said something to the media after he was released, and I asked him about that situation.
Why would you ask Mr. Reed, did he have a live interview with the media? Why would you do that?
trying to figure out if he had spoken to anyone else about the incident.
You also testified at November 25th hearing that we had, right? 2014, did you testify at November 25th, 2014 hearing that we had?
Yes, sir.
During that interview, did you state that Mr. Ritton had some pro-Jamie Hood comments, and that's what you talked about? You had heard about some pro-comments about Jamie Hood?
I had heard that he had some comments to the media, and I was clarifying some of them comments, if he was indeed actually interviewed by media on his release.
Why would you call them pro-comments?
Because at that time, we're still trying to ascertain who are the victims and who are not at that moment. So we were still digging into the investigation to see exactly what happened in the house. Unfortunately, we were not there, so we were gaining the details from the hostages.
Were you insinuating that Mr. Ritton might have been helping me, that's why you say pro-comment?
That's a leading question, and I would object to it.
Did you insinuate pro-comment to say that he was helping me? That's why that was pro-comment meant to you? Is that what it meant to you?
No, sir.
But were you aware that Mr. Ritton said to the media, Jamie didn't do no harm, he treated us like family? Are you aware of that?
From his statements, yes, sir. He said that Jamie Hood didn't do us any harm. Yes, sir.
When he told you Jamie didn't do us no harm and treated us like family, what did you take that as?
That you didn't shoot him.
What do you take when he said he treated us like family? What do you take that as?
You must have treated him with respect.
During your interview with him, did you ask him, and anybody was working with him, did you ever ask him, hey, was anybody working with Jamie? Did you ever ask him that?
Ask Mr. Ritton?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir, I did.
Why did you ask him why would you say that they were working with me?
It's part of our investigation.
You didn't ask that to intimidate me, you scared. You didn't ask him that.
No, that's a leading question, and I would object to it.
Did you ask him that to intimidate him?
No, sir. Mr. Ritton came to the office on his own will and had his 10-month-old with him during the interview.
But when he got there, did you ask him, hey, even though he come out there on his own will, did you ask him, was y'all helping Jamie? Anybody helping Jamie?
Already been asked and answered.
Did you, during your interview, did you state to Mr. Ritton, I got to ask you this, I don't want you to take it the wrong way, or you one of the guys?
Yes, sir, I did.
Why did you ask him that?
Because we were investigating, our office was still investigating the kidnapping of Jadon Brooks, and there were individuals we didn't have identified at that moment. Still don't have identified.
Did he tell you he was a hostage?
Yes, sir.
Why would you think a hostage helping Jamie? Why would you ask a hostage, was he helping Jamie?
I didn't think that. I just wanted to clarify it with you.
Did you have Mr. Ritton, did anybody leave?
Yes, sir.
What did he respond to? What did he tell you?
He advised that some folks did leave, including himself at one time.
Sir,
Including himself at one time.
what do you feel about a lady not to leave an apartment, a hostage leaving an apartment? I mean,
No, that's not an appropriate question. I would object to it.
did you ask Mr. Ritton, did he have any, did you tell Mr. Ritton, I know Jamie sold a few drugs?
Yes, sir. I believe I did make that statement.
Why would you ask Mr. Ritton anything about Jamie selling a few drugs?
I was trying to establish a relationship, if there was one, between Quentin Ryden and Mr. Hood.
Are you referring to a drug relationship, a friend relationship? What relationship?
Any relationship.
Did Mr. Ritton tell you that his son played for my football team, that's how you knew me, because
That would be hearsay again, going into the matter that is inappropriate, but that was a
did Mr. Ritton ever
Which interview, sir?
The April 7, 2011 interview.
Myself and Agent Harold.
Have you had time to look at this interview? Have you looked at the interview any time after?
It was an audio recording, yes, sir.
Or have you listened to it? I'm sorry.
Yes, sir.
Listen, how many times have you listened to it?
Several times. I've listened to it a little more recently.
Okay, during your interview, when you were talking to Mr. Wray about the phone recording, did you tell him that a lot of the recording was muffled and you need him to clear it up for you?
I just want clarification because I was not there when the recording was done. I want clarification on some of the stuff that we were hearing on the recording that Mr. Ridden had provided us.
Why would you ask Mr. Wray to clear up some muffled recordings?
Because he was there when the conversation occurred.
Explain what when you say muffled, what did you mean by muffled? And you need him to clear that up. What you meant by that?
There were parts that were not easily understood of the recording. There were some parts that were very clear. There were some parts that were not as easily understood.
What part was missing? When you say if you couldn't recognize it, tell us what you meant by that.
There were some parts that weren't easily understood, and the person that was actually there during the recording, I thought, could clarify some of the statements.
What do you mean by able to clear it up? What do you mean by clear it up? What do you mean by that?
Help us to ascertain what was being said.
Okay. Now, when y'all got ready to clear that recording up, did you cut that interview off so nobody could hear it?
No, sir, we didn't cut it off so nobody could hear it. We felt pretty confident people were going to get to hear it. When I finished, go ahead.
I'd like him to be able to answer the question.
Go ahead.
When we finished the interview, when we finished getting the information from him, we did stop the recording while he listened to the recordings that he obtained on the phone.
How long, what's the purpose of recording an interview in the first place? What's the purpose of that?
For documentation.
In case, is that documentation in case you have a trial, or so you can, people can't change their statements and you know what's going on, so the jury might be able to hear? Is that part of it, sir?
Yes, sir.
Now, you said you cut that tape recording off when you got ready to do that cell phone recording. Why?
That's easily explained. During the interview with him, we received all the information. Once we received the information, we were going to try to clarify some of the statements that were on the recording. So that was going to involve probably just rewinding, pausing, and just conversation on what was coming out of the recorder. So we stopped the recording, which is the report that I made came from that interview. That's when we stopped the recording. And then we sat there and we listened to the recorder, trying to clarify some of the stuff that was not as clear to myself or to some of the other agents.
Did you cut that recording off to hide something from the jury?
No, sir.
Why did you record the first 44 minutes and you cut off the tape?
We recorded the interview, the information that we got during the interview.
Do you cut off all of your interview when you get to something you don't want nobody to hear?
No, that's a misleading question and it's argumentative. And it's a good question.
How many times have you cut the interview off when you had it on?
I've cut the interview off when it's concluded many times.
Was it concluded, when you cut it off, did you let Mr. Reed know? Or you kept him there and y'all did something with that tape?
Mr. Ridden could have left, but he stayed there to assist us with clarifying some of the parts of the recording.
Okay, so your interview with him wasn't concluded then, was it?
The actual interview, yes, sir, it was.
Was the tape recording part of the interview?
What tape recording?
The alleged tape recording, you were talking to him about it, it's muffled, need to clear it up. When that's why you had him out there April 7th, right? Isn't that right?
Was that part of the interview? No,
Yes,
sir.
sir.
The interview was concluded before we listened to that recording.
How can the interview be concluded? You didn't let him know.
He could have left.
But, so you could have left too, but
Yes, sir.
why
because I wanted to hear if he could help me clarify what was on the recording.
What a telephone man. Did y'all record what you were doing with that cell phone? Did you clear it up or get divorced?
I'm unclear of what you're asking me.
Okay, so it was in the dark what you were doing? Was it in the dark? Could nobody see what you did?
No, that's an argumentative question for you to ask that.
So you have no audio footage or no video footage of what y'all were doing with that cell phone that you kept?
No, that's a leading question, and I would object to it as well.
Is there any recording pertaining to what y'all done to Mr. Ridge's cell phone after y'all cut that record off in the first place?
No, sir.
Why not?
He's already answered that question, I think, a number of different times, Judge, in several different ways, and I would object to it being asked.
What? What did y'all want us to hear?
Your Honor, that's argumentative. You asked that question similarly just a little bit ago, and I would object to it.
Did you keep that cell phone for evidence?
No, sir.
Why not?
It was returned to Mr. Ridden. It was forensically downloaded by one of our agents on a machine, and we were able to basically glean the contents from the phone and return the phone.
Was that phone part of a murder evidence?
It was evidence, yes, sir. It was returned back to the owner.
Why didn't you keep that evidence so the jury make it on the determination of it?
We had the evidence off the phone in our possession. We returned the hard phone back to you.
How do we know you had got the evidence off the phone and we can't see it?
We retrieved the stuff that we needed to off the phone and returned it back to Mr. Ridden.
Okay. Did anybody do a change of custody on that?
I'm sorry.
Did you do a change of custody on that phone?
When Mr. Ridden got it, yes, sir.
Okay. When you do a change of custody, isn't that what you do? You bring the court so the jury can see the evidence when you got it from who handled it?
The actual phone itself, we did not feel was pertinent to this investigation. The actual phone, the information off the phone was extremely pertinent. It was important. The phone itself was not.
But the phone itself had the alleged recording. Is that fair to say that?
Yes, sir.
So you could have brought that for evidence for the jury to see, couldn't
He's
you?
already asked that, plus that's the leading question. I would object. It's asked and answered, and it's the leading question.
How long did that phone record? Do you know how long that phone recorded? You press record on that phone, how long would it record?
I have no idea.
You don't think that would have been important to find out the truth about this alleged recording?
That's a leading question. He has it on direct examination, and that was covered.
Do you ever, how often do you let murder evidence go?
That's argumentative as well, and I would object to it.
Do you personally think that phone would have been good evidence to show in court?
No, sir. I think the contents off the phone would be really good evidence. Really, really strong evidence.
Well, you think that cell phone could have produced the evidence itself instead of you taking it off or getting what? Do you think the phone could have presented the same thing that you think with the jury? Do you think it could have?
I don't know. I don't know how long the phone would maintain the recordings and stuff that was on it.
So if you don't know how long the phone maintained recording, how do you know you got it off the phone in the first place?
I think that's argumentative as far as with you on Defendant's Exhibit 28 there?
Yes, sir, I do.
And on that, in that third paragraph at the beginning, didn't you write in there, Officer Johnson advised that he did not have a video in his car? Didn't you put that in there?
Yes, sir.
And so basically, as far as your understanding was, from Officer Johnson, he didn't even have any kind of a video machine in his car?
That's correct, yes, sir.
Okay. In addition, in that same paragraph, didn't you write in there that as he approached Officer Howard, he noticed Officer Howard's gun was in the holster? Isn't that correct?
Yes, sir.
And then he went on to say, but he thought the hood was up.
That's correct.
It had been dropped. Isn't that correct?
That's correct.
But he clearly indicated to you that the gun was in the holster at that time when you started the interview at 2:15, just moments, 45 minutes, thereabouts after the shooting. Isn't that correct?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
And isn't it true at that time he was not aware at all of what had happened to Buddy Christie? Isn't that correct?
That's correct.
Let me ask you about this interview with Quentin Ryden here on April the 7th, 2011. You understood that at that time, as brought up on direct examination, you understood that on March 25th, that Mr. Ryden had already been interviewed by an agent with the GBI. Isn't that correct?
That's correct, yes, sir.
And you understood that his phone had already been seized on that particular night. Isn't that correct?
That's correct, yes, sir.
You understood at that time that those recordings off that phone had been downloaded through a Celebrite system. Isn't that correct, at Region 11?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
And those are the recordings that you had on that day of April the 7th, 2011. Isn't that correct?
That's correct.
And you'd listened to those recordings, did you not?
Yes, sir.
And you could hear good parts of those that were very, very clear to you. Isn't that correct?
Yes, sir.
And at that time, at the time you listened to those recordings, you'd already heard the voice of Jamie Donnell Hood, the defendant.
Yes, sir.
And you'd heard him on the 911 call when he called in on March 25th, 2011. Isn't that correct?
Yes, sir.
In fact, you were the case agent who was on that particular recording who first started talking to him. Isn't that right?
That's correct.
And that was about mid-afternoon on March 25th. Isn't that correct?
That's correct.
And that went on for a good while until you passed it off to the other folks with the FBI. Isn't that right?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
So you had a number of different conversations with him at that time, didn't you?
Yes, sir.
And you heard his voice over the phone. Isn't that right?
Yes, sir.
And during that conversation on March 25th at on March 25th, when he called into 911, you understand at one point he got extremely outraged because you didn't call him back in about 2 minutes.
That's correct, yes, sir.
In addition, after he was taken into custody on the late night of March 25th, you and Agent Rossler conducted that interview of him at that time at the Athens Clark County Police Department. Isn't that correct?
Yes, sir.
And you listened to his voice then, didn't you?
Yes, sir.
And you became familiar with how he talked and his manner of talking. Isn't that correct?
Yes, sir.
And when you listened to those recordings that were downloaded from Quentin Ryden's phones that you went over with Quentin Ryden on April the 7th, you recognized that was the exact same voice that you had heard on March 25th over at 911 Center, as well as when you interviewed him. Isn't that correct?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
And the voices you heard on that recording of Quentin Ryden were the voices of Jamie Hood, right?
That's correct, yes,
In
sir.
which he admitted to basically killing Omari Wray, correct?
Yes, sir.
And he talked about what he did with John Brooks. Isn't that correct?
Yes, sir.
Object, it's speculation. He didn't see me. He can't say that to me because he didn't see me do it. So that's speculation. He can say what he feels. He can't say that to me because he wasn't number one. And number two, he said he didn't see it. So he can't say that with me. So that's speculation on his part.
He laid the foundation for him to offer that statement, Judge. Based on what he heard him on 911 for those many hours, as well as the conversation we had with him that particular night of March 25th going into the early morning of March 26th.
All rule the objection.
on that recording basically talk about what he did to Tony Howard and what he did to Buddy Christian too, didn't you?
Yes, sir.
You heard him talk about basically.
That recording didn't say nothing about no Tony Howard or Buddy Christian. I object. We just sitting here and heard it. That recording didn't say nothing about no Buddy Christian on Tony Howard.
Yes.
I have the witness on cross.
But he fought. It's misleading. Y'all, everybody heard it. I ain't saying nothing about no Tony Howard, no Officer Christian.
Objections received. Overruled.
Bottom line, whatever's on those recordings, that was the voice of Jamie Donnell Hood, isn't that correct?
That's correct. Yes, sir.
Now, that interview on March 25th, that began on March 25th and ended on March 26, 2011. During that particular interview, right at the very beginning, before he was asked any questions, didn't the defendant say, whatever I get, I deserve? Hell, I can't blame nobody. Isn't that right?
That's correct, sir.
And didn't he also say, if y'all want to give me the death chair, I deserve it because of what I did. Isn't that correct?
Yes, sir.
And you said that at the beginning of the interview and a little bit further on. Isn't that right?
Yes, sir.
And everything that was on that interview was accurate to that extent, wasn't it? It was fully recorded?
Yes, sir.
As far as the leads that you were talking about, in cases that you have, when you have a number of different leads, when you work cases, there are times that leads pan out and there's times that leads don't pan out, right?
That's correct. Yes, sir.
Sometimes you get folks who basically tell you that this is kind of what we heard, and there's really no reference or point of reference about where that came from. Isn't that right?
Yes, sir.
And there isn't really any way to follow that up, correct?
There's times that we get leads that there's no way that we can run them down.
And there's ways when you actually follow things up, basically with leads, it turned out to be nothing. Isn't that correct?
Yes, sir.
And in this instance here, there were hundreds of different leads or potential sightings of Jamie Hood during this several period days of basically this manhunt that you've described it. Isn't that right?
Yes, sir.
And virtually all those really did not pan out, correct?
That's correct.
And there were times that officers were sent out to check those out repeatedly, and they were not able to track those down. Isn't that correct?
That's correct. Numerous times.
In addition, as far as being an officer, you've been with the GBI now since 2001. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And prior to that, you worked with sheriff's departments. Isn't that correct?
That's correct. I worked with the Madison County Sheriff's Office and I worked with the University of Georgia Police Department prior to that. That's where I became certified as a police officer.
And during that time, as far as your certification, you're required, as far as using a firearm, you're required to basically be qualified on firearms training every year. Isn't that correct?
Yes, sir.
And isn't that correct? When you do that, there are times you wear protective goggles. Isn't that correct when you do that?
Yes, sir. Every time I shoot my firearm in a training environment, I'm wearing some type of eye protection.
And you do that because there may be times that those casings can come back and hit you in the eye, perhaps. Isn't that right?
That's correct.
And aren't there times that you're aware of that you've shot basically, and even in that firearm training in a controlled environment, where casings have wound up coming back and wound up in your clothing? Isn't that correct?
Absolutely. Yes, sir.
And you know about that when that's happened with other officers as well. Isn't that correct?
That's correct.
Yeah,
Yes,
I
sir.
object to this. What is relevant and what is he certified in this area? Like he told me yesterday, if he ain't certified, he can't ask me questions on it.
Objections overruled.
night he interviewed him, but they also went back the next day at Hall County, if you recall. At that time, he basically refused to be interviewed and basically did not want, he basically said, I'm not gonna talk to you and everything else. Now, if he starts going into that, it's a matter where I believe we could start going into the fact that he refused to be interviewed and didn't want to tell him anymore. They came back the next day after that particular evening, and it ended the way it did with the understanding they were gonna come back the next day. And when they went back the next day, he was all agitated and upset about Hall County. He basically said, I'm not gonna talk to you, I refuse to talk to you, and everything else is what he went into. If he starts going into that, and he's asked that particular question, so I would respectfully object to that unless somehow we're gonna get into his invocation of his rights not to basically testify the next day, which is not something we intended to ever get into.
Well, if he ain't gonna get into it, it's your call, Jim.
No, it's not my call. It's,
Okay.
what he's saying is,
I
if
understand.
you open the door.
Yeah, I do understand, yes.
You're gonna withdraw that last question, that's one option, or you can continue to pursue it, and I guess the district attorney is stating
Yeah, I do
what his
understand.
position's gonna be.
I'm gonna have him set a recall on that, I gotta do my research at night. And if he wanna get into it, I got to show the research because I ain't fully prepared for the interview. So I'm gonna hold him a recall, I'm gonna go back and look at my notes. So I just refrain from it, but right now, if I feel like I wanna visit again, I will.
Subject to recall, that's a different, these are his witnesses in that regard. I mean, he could do that with every single witness. Subject to recall, we could go on forever and ever. I think he needs to ask whatever question he deems appropriate at this time, rather than saying every time somebody comes in, subject to recall, well, I want a subject to recall, and he could go on forever and ever. At some point, Your Honor has discretion. He ought to be able to present whatever he wants to present. Maybe he needs to talk to standby counsel about that matter and address it now, rather than doing that recall.
We're gonna take a 10-minute recess, I'll allow you to do that.
Before you leave, he did the whole time. He suffered a recall a few times. He can't tell me how to do mine. I didn't tell him how to do his. I sat there and saw him do all the trial, called the same folk back several times. He did it, I can do it. I know not to just hold folk. You ain't gonna let me do it anyway.
What I expect, the difference is the progression of the case as he was presenting it was why he was bringing it, but that's,
Yeah, I do fully understand that, but
understand that's different.
yeah, but they wouldn't do it. I hadn't read nowhere in the Constitution, no Georgia law, that how I'm supposed to present mine at a certain pace. All I want was fair trial, even ground.
I understand.
So I know not to just do it because you ain't gonna let me do it no time.
So I'm
Please wait.
see if they, is there some,
It ain't gonna be long with it, we can do the break after I get finished with it, if you will, I do not have that much longer. We can just go and get him off,